Welcome to October. I'm gonna go ahead and assume if you're here, it means you love books and you love reading books and talking about books. So hey, welcome, I'm Gianna and this is the McDonald Chronicles, where we talk all about books for mom and sometimes books for their littles too. But today we are kicking off spooky season with lots of fun things. We've got a little bit of everything in this video today. So let's just jump right in. Chapters, as always, will be linked down below so you can find what you came for. Okay, so to kick off spooky season, I actually did a book haul. Not all of these books are spooky books. There's probably, I think there's almost 10 of them. First, this is Lightbringer by Pierce Brown. This is part of the Red Rising series. Red Rising is technically a trilogy, but then there are 6 books in it. This came out a couple of years ago, but we just found it on paperback. And so we have all the other ones in paperback. I'm behind. I've read Red Rising to Morningstar, and I really should read Iron Gold and just keep going through them so I can finish this, because I honestly shouldn't even be looking at the back of this because I don't want to give everything away. Then we have A Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. I don't know what this book is about. This is a fantasy book. And it's actually signed by the author, which was pretty cool. And it looks like we are following our main character, Kaylin, who is living in a land divided by war, mistrust, all those fantasy war things that you usually have. And we have David Nichols' You Are Here. I read One Day a few months ago and it broke me. So for me now, unless I read something that tells me otherwise, David Nichols is a must-buy author. I'm really excited to read this. It's another romance about Michael and Marnie. And basically both of them are dealing with the loss of their exes in their own way. Not necessarily that their exes have passed, but they've just the loss of that relationship. And they meet each other through mutual friends and decide to go on this 10-day hike without really knowing each other. And so this book just kind of follows their journey. All right, moving right along to this stack. The Sunset Years of Agnes Sharp. The little blurb says it's about a quirky group of seniors attempts to solve one murder while covering up another in this twisty, darkly funny mystery. And I just love reading murder mysteries, especially with amateur detectives. And I think when you involve seniors as amateur detectives, it just makes it a really fun twist. So I'm very excited to read this one. And I just thought the cover was so interesting. Next up is A 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Somehow I have made it this far and I still haven't read this book. This is definitely on my list. Every time I see someone talk about this book, they love it. And since it technically has a ghost in it, I figured this would be a great one for my fall bingo. If you don't know the plot of this one, essentially we are following our main character Clementine, who moves into her aunt's apartment, but she realizes there is someone else there, except that person only exists inside of the apartment. So it's more of a magical realism as opposed to a fantasy. All right, then I got the Encyclopedia of Fairies and the Map of the Other Lands. So I read Encyclopedia of Fairies I read it this year, I guess. I read it in January and I loved it. This was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved it. And I knew that I wanted to purchase it to own it because I know I'm going to reread it in the future. And then I saw Map of the Other Lands there as well, which I haven't read it. So I really, really want to make sure that I read it soon. And so I figured having both of them with similar covers would be cute. And then finally, I bought More Than You'll Ever Know by Katie Gutierrez. This is on my fall recommendations list. This is one of the top books that I wanted to read. And so when I saw it, I knew that I had to buy it. In this one, we are following our main character, Cassie, who is investigating the story of a woman named Lore, who had 2 lives, 2 sets of kids, the whole thing, and she was getting away with it until one of her husbands murdered the other. And now we are 20 years in the future, and Lore is finally deciding to talk to Cassie about what happened. So definitely looking forward to reading this. Finally, I just picked up 2 kids books, 2 Halloween books for my child's boo basket. So I did the Bernstein Bears Trick or Treat. I remember reading this when I was younger, so it was very nostalgic to see this. And then Ronald Dahl's Trick or Treat, which is a pop-up book, which is a fan favorite with toddlers. So these 2 are really cute. We've already devoured the stickers in the first one. But does anyone remember? Okay, so in my mind, Bernstein has an E at the end. It's not Bernstein, it's Bernstein. And I know that's a thing, like with the whole Genie movie. I don't remember what it's called, but it was just weird seeing it like that because in my mind, that's not how they were spelled. But I was also a child when I read it, so my memory is probably fuzzy. I kicked off October reading only thrillers for a week, which was super, super fun. I started off with More Than You'll Ever Know by Katie Gutierrez. Just want you guys to know that I just filmed this entire update with the video facing the wrong way. So here we are. So I am almost done with this book.
we have reached the point where bombs are being dropped, things are happening, everything is starting to come together. I'm like 100 pages out from finishing it, so I'm going to finish it today. I've been flipping back and forth between the audio, which is amazing, and I'm just ready to just hunker down and finish it. Some twists have come up. I saw a few of the twists coming, but I'm not really concerned about that. I'm more concerned about how the author is going to tie all this up and end everything. I feel like one way is kind of obvious, and there are a couple other ideas I have, but I don't even feel like it's about the twists. I feel like it's about the story. So far, I am loving this. I'm really curious to see how she wraps everything up, because if you've been around for even just a minute, you know that the ending to me is the most important part. That's, I feel like, where the story shines or dies.
Okay, so upon finishing this book, I am not sure why it was advertised as a thriller, because it's definitely not a thriller. It's a really, really good book. I highly, highly recommend reading it. It is a mystery. It does have that mystery component to it, but it really is more the story of two women and how they're dealing with their past and moving forward from their past and helping each other with that without really realizing they're helping each other with that. And of course, there's the whole mystery of what actually happened in 1985 with Lorde. And I do feel like that's a big part of the book, but I'm not sure why they marketed this as a thriller, because I wouldn't say it's a thriller. So if you went into this looking for a thriller, I think that would hurt your perception of the book, when really, if you just go into it like a mystery book or just as a book with two women, I think you'll love it. So I definitely recommend reading this. Do not listen to it being marketed as a thriller, and don't read it like you're looking for a thriller, because that's not what you're going to get out of it. Now I am, I think, like 150 pages into The Lost Sister by Kendra Elliott. I am loving this one as well. We are following Kendra and are following Emily. She's the manager of this restaurant, and she was going to check on one of her waitresses because she didn't show up for work. And it turns out that everyone was murdered, the waitress, the husband, etc. Emily realized right away that it was not a murder-suicide, it was definitely a hate crime, and so she basically is the reason the FBI is here in this town. It is amazing, this book so far, honestly. It's got everything. It's got multiple points of view. We've got a small town. There's all these things, these little pieces happening. You know, the couple isn't as happy as everyone seemed, of course. We've got things with Emily's past coming up. She has a sister who disappeared after her family tragedy. And then Xander, the lead FBI agent, also definitely has something going on, which the author is alluding to, but we have no idea what yet. But anyway, regardless, I'm super into it. It's really not that long. It's like 300 pages, so I'm flying through it, and it has been really, really good so far. As though this book started off really, 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 really suspenseful. And I felt that I really wanted to read it. I was so into it. And then the romance between the detective and the main character kind of put me off throughout the book. It was very odd, because I didn't feel like the romance was very well developed, and I almost felt like it was an afterthought, and the book could have done without that. And then by that same token, I felt like the first half of the book was 5-star material, and then the second half of the book was 3-star material. So I'm not really quite sure what happened there, but it almost felt like at a time I was reading two different books. But I wasn't. I was reading the same book. Last book I read to kick off my week of thrillers was What Lies in the Woods by Katie Alice Marshall. When I read the first chapter of this book, my jaw was hanging open. I could not believe the first chapter. And essentially it was two girls running out of the woods covered in blood, and one of their friends had been killed. But the narrator is basically saying that's not what actually happened. And I think that's just a great way to kick off the first chapter, because then you really want to know what happens. Throughout the book, I was hooked. I did really enjoy the book. I don't feel as though the ending was a huge surprise. There were some twists along the way, but I didn't feel shocked by the ending. I'm not sure why, but I wasn't shocked. I feel like maybe I should have been shocked, but I wasn't shocked. However, I will say that the suspense in the book was great. I do feel as though the characters were well developed. I really enjoyed Naomi. I really enjoyed her point of view. And I think what I like about this book is that it's not glossing over the fact that she is a friggin' mess. And I think sometimes in thriller books, when we're talking about people who have experienced this super traumatic event, they're fine, and then we're shocked when they're not fine. I feel like we should be more shocked when they're fine. The little bits and pieces of the story just kept moving and moving and moving. So this was a great one for suspense, just a continuous, fast-paced moving story. Okay, and now I want to show you all my reading journal. So I did this probably a few months ago. I started a reading journal, and it was actually very relaxing, which is why I started it. I did the beginning where I did the bookshelf so I could color in the books, and the way I divided it was by audiobook, Kindle book, and physical book, just to keep track of that. I think next year what I want to do is keep track of them as library books, because I want to make sure I'm also taking advantage of my library, which I usually do. So I think that'd be a fun thing to track, or maybe just outlining my library books. I went in and I added all the books that I've read this year. I actually am already at 58 books, which is wild. I cannot believe that. And I went through and just fixed up some of the pages that I had started and hadn't finished. So I have my top books of each month, and then I had this spread that I made in August because I was going to do a video on wrapping up all of my summer reading, going by a Goodreads list, but that video kind of fell through. I wanted to do something different, but I did read some books on that list, so I wanted to include them in here. And then I also wanted to update my fall reading bingo. So this is something that I created. I have a printable version of it. I'll link it down below. My plan for this spread is to put the books that go along with each category just on the right hand side. Then I also made an October spread. I would love to have the time to just sit and doodle and do all these cute little drawings, but I just don't. I got the doodle page off Canva and then just added the October on top of it and then just glued it right into the journals. I like the way it's turned out so far, and I think it's kind of a fun way to just keep track of what I'm reading over Goodreads. I love using Goodreads, but I think it's a fun way to keep track of what I'm reading, and it's a fun little creative outlet. Okay, y'all, well, I'm happy that we were able to kick off October together. I've really been making a point to enjoy the season this year, and it's been a lot of fun. If you found a book that you would like to add to your reading list, please go ahead and like this video and consider subscribing. It is a free way to support my channel and allows me to keep making videos like this just for you. And if you're looking for even more ways to get into the fall spirit, go ahead and check out my fall reading recommendations. I've got over 40 books in that list, so you're bound to find a book that you like. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for sticking with me. We got my reading life together for October. We found your next great read, and I'll see you next time.